If you felt like writing all that code to handle dates and times was maybe just slightly tedious, you are not alone. In the grand scheme of things, it wasn't a ton of code, but if you were working with dates and times a great deal, you would probably want something to help. We're going to look at a couple of third-party libraries that are very helpful for working with dates and times, and try using one of them. Probably the most popular library for dates and times in JavaScript is moment.js. It can do almost anything you could possibly want, and just like it says here, it can parse, validate, manipulate, and display dates and times in JavaScript. It can deal with time zones for you, do almost anything you want. There's also another smaller library just called date and time. This is the one we'll be using in this example because it's much smaller and it's very focused, and it happens to do exactly what we need for this project. Both of these packages are also available on NPM, the Node Package Manager. It's a very handy utility that works on the command line for downloading and managing JavaScript packages. If you're working with third-party JavaScript packages, you would be well served to learn how to use it. Check out the course Learning NPM, the Node Package Manager, to get started with that. I've included moment and date and time in the lib folder of the exercise files for this chapter, so you can easily try out either one. We're going to use date and time, as I said, because it's leaner and does exactly what we want. To use these libraries, we need to install them with their script tags. So I'm going to scroll all the way down to the bottom of this file. Here we go. This is our custom script file, so we need to add date and time before this. With the structure of our exercise files, this is going to be up a level and then into the lib folder. We're going to call date and time, and we can use either the minified version or the non-minified version. We'll use the non-minified version for now in case we want to read this, but if you were going into production, you'd want to use the minified version. The date and time library is so small that it doesn't include built-in support for Meridian time formats. There's a plugin for that you can install as well, which is also available here in the exercise files. Visual Studio Code is very helpful in completing the name of that for me. So I'm loading these in the correct order. First the library, then the plugin that handles that particular time format that I'm going to be interested in, and then my custom script file where I'm actually going to use that library. Okay, I can save this and move on to my actual script. Here's the code that we're going to be modifying. Let's take a look at the documentation for date and time and see what we're going to be using. The documentation appears here on NPM and on the GitHub page. Either one will be fine. So we'll scroll down. What we're looking for is a way to format our date in the way that we want it to display. And as luck would have it, the very first function is called format. We can see this takes a date object, and then there are a variety of formats here. We have the month in various formats, the day, the year, the meridian. We have an asterisk here reminding us that this is going to need to be in the plugin. Just about anything we could want here. So let's go back to our code and we're going to use what we're learning here. Pretty much all of this code up here is dealing with time formatting and date formatting. So we can get rid of all of it. All we need is our date object. And then we're also going to need to load the plugin. When we bring date and time into our project, that exposes a global object called date lowercase. And it has a method called plugin for loading its plugins. So we're going to load the Meridian plugin, or rather we're going to tell date to use the plugin. It's already loaded by that script tag. We have our formatting for our time separator, and now this is where all the display actually happens. So we're going to be using the date format function. So this is date.format. And looking at the signature of the function here in its documentation again, the first parameter is the date object. So in our case, it's going to be D. They're calling it now in the docs. So we'll pass in D. And then the second parameter is the particular formatting that we want. So for the time, the first thing that we want is the 12-hour version of the hour. And here it is right here. You can get it with or without leading zeros. If we pass in just H as a string, like this, we will get the hour in a 12-hour format with no leading zero. Next, we're going to want the minutes. And for that, we have a couple of options here, with and without leading zeros. In this case, we do want the leading zeros for the minutes. So we'll use MM. And we could copy this and wipe out AM/PM like this. But because this whole thing is a formatting string, we can put everything in here. So what I want here is the minutes followed by the AM or PM. Referring back to the documentation, here's the meridian. And I'm going to take the version with no periods, which is a double capital A. There we go. Likewise, I'm going to be able to get rid of everything here for the date, replace that with a date format. And to save us a few round trips back to the documentation, I'll just tell you that we want the full name of the month spelled out, which is 4 capital M's, and then a space, and the date, which is a capital D. I'll save that, and we no longer need this format month function either. Bye-bye. We've saved this. Now let's switch back to the browser and check it out. I reload, and I can see I have a double A here, so clearly something is not working here. Let's go back and check this. Oh yeah, I misspelled meridian. Save that, switch back, and refresh one more time. There we go, that's what we want. For comparison's sake, here's the version that uses a library. And here's the previous version, where we wrote everything ourselves. This could be cut down a little bit with some different formatting, but it's still almost twice as much code. So you have to balance the trade-offs of including a library which has probably 16 kilobytes maybe of code just for a little bit of savings here, but it's a relatively small library and it could be worth the trade-off here. I usually think it is to use this small version of a date and time formatting library to get this kind of functionality. But depending on your project, you can make that decision for yourself. The point is, when we use that third-party library, our developer experience is much more pleasant, and it results in a good user experience as well.